The ocean that night felt like it was trying to kill me. The water was black, angry, and so cold it felt like it was biting through my bones. My arms were shaking, my legs were numb, and every kick sent a scream up my spine. I remember the exact moment my mind broke. I heard myself whisper, "I can't do this." Not out loud, never out loud, but inside, in that quiet place where weakness likes to hide. And that's the dangerous part. Weakness doesn't announce itself. It slips in like fog and convinces you the mission is already lost. In those seconds, I wasn't a Navy SEAL. I wasn't a warrior. I wasn't a man who had trained for years to be there. I was just a scared kid in freezing water, and quitting felt like the easiest way out. My mind started painting exits. Just stop kicking, they'll pull you out. You've done enough. Nobody will blame you. But here's the truth. Quitting early doesn't just end the moment, it erodes something deeper. Every time you surrender to that voice, you shrink the part of yourself that believes you're capable of more. And I knew if I quit tonight, that version of me would follow me forever. But then something happened, a shift, a flicker, and it's the reason you're here listening to me right now. A simple sentence rose up inside me, not from comfort, but from clarity. When you feel weak, remember this: your mind is lying to you. That was the switch. That was the moment the mission wasn't just about surviving the cold anymore. It was about proving to myself that the voice telling me to quit wasn't the truth. It was just the first wall. According to a Stanford psychology study, your brain signals fatigue long before your body is actually done. It's a built-in survival system. But what keeps most people stuck is they treat that first signal like a full stop, not a checkpoint. In the teams, we learn the reality behind that signal. It's what we call the 40% rule. When you think you've hit your limit, you're only about 40% done. Your tank isn't empty. You've just reached the point where your brain starts negotiating with your fear. That's why feeling weak is dangerous, not because weakness itself is fatal, but because it convinces you to turn back at the very moment you need to push forward. Weakness wants you comfortable. Growth wants you uncomfortable. And if you listen to the wrong voice at the wrong time, your potential never even gets the chance to show up. Here's the hope, though. You don't need to be a Navy SEAL to use what I learned that night. The switch I flipped in the water is the same one you can flip when you're exhausted, overwhelmed, or ready to give up. Most people make one big mistake. They wait to feel ready. They wait for motivation, clarity, energy, or confidence. But let me tell you something from someone who spent years in high stakes environments. Readiness is a myth. If I waited to feel ready, I'd still be floating in that Pacific Ocean. So here's the little secret. The cue we used in the teams when our bodies wanted to shut down. It's simple. One more minute, one more step, one more rep, one more breath. Break the moment, shrink the battle, reset your mind. Because quitting is always a big decision, but continuing is always a small one. That's how I stayed alive that night, not by feeling strong, but by refusing to let weakness decide the outcome. And when you feel weak, when your mind starts whispering that you're done, remember this: you are nowhere near finished. You're just at 40%. The mission is far from over. When I tell people that the most dangerous enemy they'll ever face isn't out on the battlefield, but inside their own skull, they usually think I'm joking, but I'm dead serious. Your brain, your own brain, is built to lie to you, not because it hates you, but because it's trying to keep you alive. It was designed for survival, not for greatness. And that survival system, the ancient one running in the background, hits the panic button long before you ever reach your actual limit. That's why weakness feels so real, so heavy, so convincing. It's because your brain wants you to stop the moment anything feels uncomfortable. But here's the problem: the life you want is always on the other side of that discomfort. I learned this the hard way during SEAL training. There were times when my heart was pounding, my legs were shaking, and my lungs felt like they were turning inside out. Everything in my head was screaming the same message: stop, shut down, you've gone too far. But I wasn't actually done. I wasn't even close. That voice wasn't truth. It was fear wearing a lab coat, pretending to be logic. And if I had listened to it, I would have walked away from the one thing that would shape the rest of my life. Neuroscientists from MIT discovered something fascinating about this survival system. They found that when you approach the edge of your comfort zone, your brain fires warning signals as if you're in real physical danger, even when you have plenty of strength left. Your brain wants certainty, safety, predictability. Growth threatens all three. So your mind shuts you down far too early, telling you that weakness means stop. That's the danger most people never see. They think the feeling is the limit. They treat the signal like a fact. But here's the truth: weakness is just a message. It's not the conclusion. The moment I understood that, everything changed. I stopped treating the weak moments like a brick wall and started treating them like a checkpoint. That's the solution I want you to learn too. How to override that false signal and keep going even when your brain is begging you to quit. Because once you realize that weakness is just your mind pulling the fire alarm too early, you stop panicking, you start testing, you start pushing, and you start discovering what you're actually capable of. But most people make the same mistake over and over again. They assume that feeling weak means they're failing. They think shaking knees mean they're not cut out for the goal. They think doubt means the dream isn't for them. They think fear is a sign to turn around. That's not failure, that's biology. That's the built-in system trying to pull you back to safety, even when the path forward is exactly what you need. So I started using something I now call the micro mission technique, a SEAL trick I developed when the pressure was too heavy and the voice in my head was too loud. The idea is simple. When the mission feels impossible, shrink it. Don't think about the finish line. Don't think about the whole workout, the whole day, the whole journey. Break it into something so small, so manageable that your brain has no reason to panic. 1 minute, one corner, one rep, one email, one conversation, one breath. Micro missions turn fear into motion by denying your brain the chance to overwhelm you. You override the survival lie by giving your mind something it can't argue with, a task so small it feels safe. And here's where hope comes in. The moment you complete that tiny mission, something powerful happens. You build momentum, your confidence rises, your breathing steadies, and you realize that the panic signal was just noise. The weakness fades, not because you became stronger in that second, but because you proved to yourself that you were never actually finished. Each micro mission becomes another step forward, another shot across the bow of your own fear. This is how you take control back, not by fighting the brain directly, but by outsmarting it, by breaking the mission into pieces so small that even your fear can't stop you. And once you learn to turn fear into momentum, you become unstoppable. I remember one night on deployment when everything went sideways in seconds. We were moving through a narrow alley, moonless sky overhead, nothing but shadows and tension pressing in from every angle. Then a door slammed somewhere behind us, loud, sharp, unexpected. My heart detonated in my chest. My pulse spiked so hard it felt like electricity shooting through my arms. For a split second, panic gripped me by the throat. Not fear, panic. The kind that doesn't ask permission. The kind that crashes into you like a wave and tries to drown your ability to think. And in that moment, the wrong reaction could have gotten someone killed. The danger wasn't the sound. The danger was my body starting to spiral. When your nervous system floods with adrenaline, it doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care if you're trained, disciplined, or experienced. It cares about survival, and survival is a blunt instrument. Your vision narrows, your hands shake, your breathing turns shallow, your brain jumps ahead to worst-case scenarios. This is the moment most people lose control, the moment where the body takes over and the mind goes offline. And that's exactly why I needed a tool that could pull me back from the edge instantly. No matter how chaotic the situation was, that tool became my lifeline. We call it the 4-breath reset. 4 breaths that can flip your nervous system from panic mode to control mode. 4 breaths that can stop the spiral before it becomes irreversible. 4 breaths that saved me more times than I can count. Here's how it works. When stress hits, your breath is the first thing to break. People think they're breathing normally, but they're not. They start pulling quick, sharp breaths from the top of their lungs. That only sends the message back to the brain. We're in danger, keep panicking. That's the mistake almost everyone makes. They speed up instead of slowing down. They feed the very system that's betraying them. But the 4-breath reset interrupts that cycle. It's simple, deliberate, and fast. You inhale deeply through your nose for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold again for 4. Do that 4 times. 16 seconds each breath cycle, 64 seconds total. In just over 1 minute, you can take a mind that's falling apart and snap it back into clarity. That night in the alley, I ran the cycle once, then again, and my vision widened, my pulse steadied, and the panic dissolved. I was back. I could think clearly. I could lead. I could be useful instead of dangerous. Japanese performance coaches teach a similar reset method to Olympic athletes who need to drop into focus under extreme pressure. And that's the thing. This isn't a Navy SEAL trick. It's a human trick. It works because your body is wired to respond to breath. You're simply using the switch correctly instead of letting stress flip it for you. There's one more layer to this, though, the part most people never think about. When I do the 4-breath reset, I don't just breathe, I anchor it. I tie each breath to a physical cue that tells my brain, we're switching modes now. For me, it's pressing my thumb against the side of my index finger, hard enough to feel it, but not enough to hurt. That pressure becomes the bridge between breath and focus. It's the secret trick that locks the reset into place. Without an anchor, the breaths help. With an anchor, they transform you. And here's where hope comes in. You don't need to be under fire for this to work. You don't need enemies, missions, or danger. You can use this in the office before a meeting that scares you. You can use it when your kids overwhelm you. You can use it when you're about to break your diet, skip your workout, quit your project, or fall back into old habits. You can use it when you wake up anxious, when you're stuck in traffic, or when life blindsides you out of nowhere. Stress is part of life. Panic doesn't have to be 4 breaths, 1 anchor, 1 minute, total control. You can master it just like I did. There's a moment in every person's life where they misunderstand what strength really looks like. Most people think strength is about feeling fired up, inspired, unstoppable. They think motivation is the fuel that carries winners through difficulty. But I've seen the truth up close in the mud, in the cold, in the dark, and in the moments where everything you planned collapses. And the truth is simple. Motivation is a trap. It's unreliable. It abandons you when life gets heavy. It disappears exactly when you need it most. And if you depend on motivation to carry you, you'll collapse the instant things stop being comfortable. I learned this during Bud S, long before I ever stepped into a real mission. There were days when my body felt carved out of steel, when I woke up ready to attack whatever the instructors threw at us. But there were also days, many more of them, when I woke up feeling broken before the morning even started. Days when my legs felt like concrete, when my mind felt foggy, when the cold cut through me before sunrise even hit the horizon. On those days, motivation didn't just fail me, it left the room entirely. It was gone. No spark, no energy, no inspiration. If I depended on motivation, I would have rung the bell and walked away. That's the danger people don't see. Motivation doesn't fade when things are easy. It fades when your life hits the point where you need strength the most, when your job is draining you, when your relationships are stressful, when your goals feel impossible, when you're tired, when you're scared, when you're overwhelmed. Anyone can act strong when they feel strong. The question is, who are you when you don't? That's where my core rule was born. Discipline over emotion. It saved my life as a SEAL, and it continues to save my life as a civilian. The rule is simple. Your actions cannot be tied to your feelings. If you let your emotions control your consistency, you'll always be unstable. But if your consistency controls your emotions, you become unshakable. Discipline doesn't care whether you're tired. It doesn't care whether you're in the mood. It doesn't care whether you feel like it. Discipline is a decision, a non-negotiable contract with yourself. But here's the mistake almost everyone makes. They confuse discipline with motivation. They think discipline means feeling energized, focused, excited. They think discipline is supposed to feel good before it feels useful, so when they wake up tired, stressed, or irritated, they assume something is wrong with them. They assume they're failing. They assume they're not built for the goal, but nothing is wrong with them. They're just tying discipline to emotions that were never meant to lead the way. Discipline is doing the thing even when the feeling isn't there, especially when the feeling isn't there. There's a secret trick I used to train this, something I now call the 2-minute pain window. I discovered it by accident during a long-distance evolution that nearly broke me. I was exhausted, freezing, and every step felt like I was walking barefoot on glass. I kept thinking I couldn't last another hour. Then I realized something. The suffering comes in waves, not forever. If I could get through 2 minutes of pain, the intensity dropped. If I could hold on another 2 minutes, the pain changed again. So instead of fighting the whole challenge, I fought 2 minutes at a time. Just two. Anyone can survive 2 minutes, even you, especially you. When you apply this to your life, something powerful happens. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop looking for motivation. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. Instead, you make a small, tough decision over and over again. And each time you do, you build something even more valuable than strength. You build self-respect. Harvard researchers found that small, consistent actions compound your confidence faster than big inspirational moments. Every time you follow through, you prove something to yourself. You show yourself you can be trusted. You show yourself you are capable. You show yourself that you don't fold when life gets difficult. That self-respect compounds. It becomes a quiet power inside you. And one day you realize you're not chasing motivation anymore. Motivation is chasing you. There's a point in every life, not just in training, not just in combat, but in ordinary civilian life where everything hits you at the same time. Stress from work, fatigue from sleepless nights, doubts you didn't ask for, responsibilities piling up faster than you can handle them. It's the moment when your shoulders feel too small to carry what's on them, the moment when your chest feels tight for reasons you can't explain, the moment when you look at yourself and think, I don't know if I can keep going. Most people think that moment is rare. I can promise you it's not. I've met CEOs, teachers, parents, teenagers, soldiers, Every one of them has had a moment where life breaks them, or at least tries to. And that's the fear I want to talk about. Not just physical weakness, but emotional collapse. The kind that sneaks in slowly at first, then suddenly all at once. This is the danger zone, the place where people don't just pause, they quit permanently. During SEAL training, I learned something about these breaking points. It wasn't from an instructor, it wasn't from a textbook. It was from watching men who were physically stronger than me, faster than me, more gifted than me, walk off the beach and ring that brass bell, not because their bodies failed, but because their minds convinced them they had reached the end. There's a misconception about quitting. It doesn't happen at the moment of impact. It happens long before that, during the emotional low that whispers, "You've got nothing left. This is it." That whisper is the real enemy. But in the teams, we learned something powerful, something most people never hear about. Everyone knows about the second wind, that moment when you're exhausted and suddenly you get a burst of energy. But what most people don't know is that there's something far beyond it. A place past exhaustion, past self-doubt, past the shaking hands and burning lungs. A place we called the third wind. That's the solution. The moment when your body and mind unlock a deeper reserve you didn't even know existed. According to endurance researchers in Norway, elite performers tap into hidden layers of capacity only after the body has already signaled its limit twice. In other words, the third wind is real, and it's far beyond where most people ever push themselves. The mistake is that people assume their emotional low is the end. They think the breakdown is proof they're not strong enough. They feel panic, fear, or exhaustion and interpret it as the final chapter. But that low isn't the end, it's the doorway, the transition point, the threshold you must cross to discover the part of you that doesn't crumble. When you hit that moment, the voice in your head tells you that quitting is logical, reasonable, even responsible. But that voice is lying. It's the same survival instinct that fires during the 40% rule. It's just wearing a different disguise. To reach the third wind, I used a simple mental technique that became one of the most important rules of my life. I call it the one more rep of life rule. When everything felt impossible, when my body was failing, when fear was tightening its grip, when doubt felt heavier than my gear, I didn't look at the next hour or the next mile. I didn't look at the whole mission. I didn't even look at the next minute. I looked at the next rep. Just one step, one push, one movement, one breath. That was my rep. And when I finished it, I did one more and another. Because here's the truth, the third wind doesn't come to people who wait for strength. It comes to people who move while they're weak. This is where hope lives. Not in the days when you feel strong, confident, or energized. Those days don't change your life. The comeback moments, the real ones, are built right here, when life is crushing you and you refuse to surrender. When you're tired, scared, overwhelmed, and still you whisper to yourself, one more rep. That's where identity is forged. That's where self-respect is created. That's where your future self gets built. You don't need to be a SEAL to find your third wind. You just need to reach that moment when everything inside you says stop and take one more rep instead. There comes a moment after all the struggle, all the cold, all the fear and doubt when you realize something that almost no one understands. Real strength has very little to do with muscle. The body is just the vehicle. The mind is just the engine. What truly determines how far you can go, what separates the ones who rise from the ones who quit, is identity. Who you believe you are when everything goes dark, who you decide you are when you're tired, scared, overwhelmed, and tempted to walk away. Strength isn't built from the outside in, it's built from the inside out. And when you finally see yourself as the kind of person who doesn't quit, everything changes. I learned this after years of pushing myself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I kept thinking that if I trained harder, prepared more, forced myself through enough hell, I would become unbreakable. But discipline alone wasn't enough. Drive alone wasn't enough. Even skill wasn't enough. I watched men who were stronger, faster, and smarter than me crumble because they built everything on motivation and willpower, but never on identity. They ignored who they believed themselves to be. That's the danger most people walk into without realizing it. If your identity doesn't match your goals, your growth will always be temporary. It'll fade the moment life applies pressure. Military psychologists who study elite operators say that what separates top performers isn't physical resilience, it's identity resilience. SEALs don't survive Hell Week because they're the strongest. They survive because they unconsciously adopt an identity that says, I am the kind of person who finishes the mission no matter what. That's the solution most people never learn, the identity shift. In the teams, we were trained not just in tactics, but in who we were supposed to be. operators who move forward under pressure, who stay calm in chaos, who refuse to give the weaker voice in their head the final vote. Once that identity clicks into place, everything else becomes easier. You don't negotiate with yourself anymore. You don't wait to feel ready. You act because it's who you are. But the mistake people make in civilian life is believing discipline comes from the outside, from apps, routines, alarms, coaches, accountability partners, or motivational videos. Those tools can help, but they can't carry your life. They can't be the reason you show up. Because if your discipline depends on something external, the second it disappears, your consistency disappears with it. Discipline has to come from inside you, from identity, not from the environment you're in. There's a trick I use to anchor this identity, something I teach to the people I mentor now. I call it the future you test. When I'm standing at the edge of a weak moment, tired, tempted, discouraged, I don't ask myself what I want right now. I ask, if the future version of me was watching me in this moment, would he be proud or disappointed? That question slices straight through excuses. It forces you to think like the person you can become, not the person you've been. When you answer honestly, the next action becomes obvious. And with every small choice, every small follow through, you start becoming that future version. Identity grows one decision at a time. So let me tie this back to why you clicked this video in the first place. When you feel weak, when your mind tells you you're done, remember this. You're only operating at about 40%. You still have far more in you. The mission isn't over. You aren't finished. You're just standing at the doorway of who you could become. And if you choose to walk through it, if you choose to see yourself as someone who finishes what they start, who doesn't fold when it gets hard, who keeps moving one rep at a time, you will transform. Not someday, not eventually, but starting right now. But here's the truth I haven't told you yet. There's one SEAL rule even more powerful than everything I've shared in this video. It's the rule that separates survivors from legends, and most people never hear it until it's too late.